like to think of ourselves as a band of misfits. People that didn't always have the right pedigree. We have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder because we didn't get into the best schools or the best places. We didn't get the same opportunities others, or weren't born into the right families. When banded together and working together, we can achieve things that people would not expect. I'm so excited by that because I think that represents so much of the Bible. And I think about Gideon because he took this massive force and was stripped down through these different situations, and he only needed 300 because he was never actually going to have sword fight with sword. He was going to come. God was going to produce the battle result in a much different way. And how I thought of that was when we go to battle, it's not just our fight. There's going to be a different way to play the game. So I think what we have is this idea that if we find the right band of misfits, we can accomplish anything. I found my founding team throughout Berkeley time, and then we started doing hackathons together. And there was an Andreessen Horowitz-sponsored Bitcoin hackathon, Berkeley versus Stanford. We managed to win that hackathon with the idea of Bitcoin remittance, so sending money from the US to Indonesia, in this example, using Bitcoin. We managed to convince YC that it was a good idea, and so we remitted summer 15. And one Australian company, I think it was the first commercial drone delivery company in the world, and they signed a deal with NASA. The other Australian company was growing their profits 20% every month. And meanwhile, we were trying to give away a free app that no one wanted to use. So 6 weeks in, I remember coming back from Asia and saying to Justin Khan, who was our YC partner, Justin Khan, founder of Twitch, sold to Amazon for $1 billion. We said to him, hey, we're failing, we have no results. And I remember very clearly on the clock, 12 minutes in, he said, why don't you build Venmo for Indonesia and see what you can build?
So to understand the remittance issue in Southeast Asia, it's very difficult as an American. If you live in Europe or you live in Southeast Asia, which are much less monolithic in terms of size and scope, there are a lot of issues of how to transact across different currencies, across different borders, and maintain compliance with regulatory standards about how money moves. And Moses for us was a great reminder that God uses the diversity of his people to fulfill his purposes. His ability to listen to people, articulate that problem, and then be able to actually pivot his company completely based on what the market would give him to start, that's unique. It's very difficult, I think, particularly different cultures, to say, hey, what we were doing was wrong and we're going to do something different. Moses was completely unafraid to do that.
I think of it as this Venn diagram where you have a group of people that are able to come home and build something, and then the other circle is people that are willing to come back. Because often those who can come from institutions, families, the status quo where they're not incentivized to disrupt. They're really beneficiaries. The top 3 schools for venture-backed founders, Stanford, Berkeley, Harvard. And so I think you just see this kind of network effect bias to very few schools. And so those of us who come from nothing, have no families and have no reason to keep the status quo and are willing to go change everything, I think that's a very small group. In my case, my parents did all this work to get me out of a situation. And so when I said, hey, I want to go back home and build this, they're like, this is crazy. I'll sacrifice it so that you can enjoy the American dream, the Australian dream. And instead, this is giving it up and going back home and building where we're going from kind of dirt roads to paved roads in the infrastructure world. Xendit is payments for Southeast Asia. We help merchants accept and send out payments all throughout the region. When you start a shop in our markets, you want to be able to accept all the different payment methods that are out there. And before we existed, you have to ask each bank for access to those payment methods. What we do is we say, integrate with us once, dear new shop, dear merchant, and we will bring you all these payment methods so you don't have to build them. So our first 50 customers from that point onwards was just pure painful pounding the pavement, cold calling, cold emailing, begging friends to introduce their friends, trying to meet other founders and say, hey, will you please use our payments products? And over time then iterating our product to meet, add more features and meet what they wanted. And I think for 9 months it was this painful process of trying to find new customers, having things failing and having us fixing, and then getting another customer, things would fail, we'd fix, and that very iterative process. We were at the F1 in Singapore, and we were in the Mandarin Oriental overseeing F1 cars zoom by, and then getting a call from one of our engineers being our ledger's going down. We called up our ledger, which at the time was outsourced, and said, hey, ledger's down, will you help? And they said, hey, we don't work on the weekends. And we're like, you're a ledger, how can you not work on the weekends? And so we said, okay, we can't help that, but what we're gonna do is we know that the banks in Indonesia are down till the next morning, so we're gonna build a whole new ledger by morning. So we ran home from the Mandarin Oriental and we were on the inside of the F1 track. And we opened some emergency doors, got chased by some security guards, but ran back to our hotel room. Well, that night, we went on shifts. 2 hours on, half an hour sleep, 2 hours on, half an hour sleep. And we built two different ledgers. We built a primary ledger that we would use for our business and a secondary one that was a recon. By morning, we launched this new ledger. Only a few customers noticed that something was awry, but we launched our one-day version. And we made that thing survive till the bank shut down that evening. And then the next night, we did the exact same thing again till we got a two-day version of our ledger. And we did that continuously for a week till we built something that would actually survive.
I think the founders have set up a very good culture. You know, when we started Xendit, we hire people with attitude rather than aptitude, right? So what that means is that we hire people with the right mindset, and they don't mind about, for example, when we started Xendit, to be fair, the pay or compensation wasn't that good. But what happened is that we wanted to learn. We are hungry for knowledge. We wanted to do something different. And I think that was what Xendit has done differently. And I think Moses and the founders have set out such a culture that say, hey, I trust you. You come in with the attitude, you learn as much as you can. But that also means that we can speak out what we want and we can do what we want. And I think that is an environment that is very open for ideas. And I think that was where the trust is from Xendit. And I think this is where, how far the trust has bring us to this point today.
The rules with hiring, it didn't work for us. We were trying to find creative ways to hire people because we couldn't afford to pay the same prices as other unicorns or other venture-backed businesses. And so we got this idea, actually it was from the Collison brothers at Stripe, to hire groups of friends. So we went to a group of friends at the Technical University in Indonesia and said, hey, we can't pay you as much, but we'll give all 12 of you one friendship group, all offers, and we'll teach you to code like Berkeley taught us to code, and you get to work with your friends every day. And we thought maybe 2 would say yes to that, but all 12 did. And so we ended up going from a team of like 2 or 3 to a team of 15. Well, the next problem we found was we were trying to hire product managers. And when I looked to kind of the Valley, I saw a lot of product managers were ex-consultants or bankers or ex-backgrounds like this. When we looked in Asia, I was like, well, consultants, and I am one, so I can say this, super cocky, don't know how to actually do anything. And bankers are paid even more and can do even less. So we said, hey, where else can we go to find potential product management talent? And we found lawyers. And lawyers are paid less, they work harder, and they have amazing attention to detail. So we hired one lawyer, and that really worked out. So once we found that working, we then hired the whole group of friends again. And so the first 2 years of Xendit was just us hiring groups of friends all at once.
So one of my best friends, she was also a lawyer, and she was the first Singaporean to join Xendit. She told us a bunch of stuff about what she'd been doing, her mentality towards her experiences that, hey, this place is full of cool individuals, and their attitude towards work is, if we can't solve a problem, we'll just build stuff to fix it. And it was always that type of attitude that he had towards issues and solving problems. I left the legal profession because I felt like it was destructive. I was in litigation, so I felt like we were just destroying things, right? We were just going to court and things like that. And we were not building anything productive. I think that at Xendit, we are disrupting things for good. I'm a misfit because my profile is not someone who would usually join a tech startup, right? Because coming from the legal profession is pretty comfortable. There's a certainty on the track that you're walking. So I think in that sense, I'm a misfit because not many people choose to do this, especially for early stage startups. Many of us, or in fact most of us are, I would say, defined by that same attitude, spirit, and mentality.
So, everybody's hiring against a profile of what they think it looks like to have a head of sales or a head of technology or a head of R&D or whatever. Moses, I think, for us, redefined what an entrepreneur looks like. We had never encountered an entrepreneur like Moses.
So we were doing these case interviews, which is common practice, where we give you a problem set and you do it with us over a 30-minute period. What we found is our ability to predict whether someone would do well at Xendit was about 65%, which I think is way too low. And so we decided to try a different idea, which was you work with us for a whole day, and instead of me and a whole super day where 7 people interview you, instead we give you a problem that we are facing right now, not a made-up problem, but a real problem. And at the end of the day, present what your solution is. People said, you're crazy. Why would you have a trial day? Engineers have 5, 6 different other job offers on the table. Why would they ever work for you? But it then caused this self-selection bias where people were humble because they're willing to do a trial day even though they have other offers. And so this trial day forced these very senior people to become humble and execute with junior people on that trial day. And interact with junior people that in maybe their org they haven't done in 5 years. And we were able to test and see what their true nature is. So this trial day, which started as this weird device that would turn away candidates, became this really useful device to bring the right people in. Also, our ability to kind of predict how people would perform increased to closer towards 90% to say, would someone be able to survive and thrive at Xendit?
My team's really awesome. I work with a lot of very senior experienced people, and I'm not a senior experienced person, but I think the great thing about Xendit is that we don't look at people's resumes, we just look at how hard they work and what they can bring to the table. Xendit sees people how they can be and like where they can be as opposed to where they are now. I think that really shows in terms of how our leaders give people the opportunity to grow into something bigger than what they are now. They trust us to lead big roles even if we don't have, shiny resumes or something like that.
I think in Southeast Asia there is a little bit more reliance on past achievements or some version of pedigree. Well, what we say is we don't care where you've come from, we care about where you're going, which I think is also a very biblical way of looking at things. And so we have a head of product now who never finished high school. We have one of our best performers is someone who never got a diploma, never got a university degree. It's a barista that we said, hey, I need you at Xendit. I was speaking to someone where they said, it's gone from them to us. I said, what do you mean? And he said, I always thought that they can build cool startups, they can build unicorns. And now I realize how we can. I always thought you needed to come from a certain family, to have a certain background. And now I realize that a small band of us doing the right things, we can actually go build something bigger, something just as good. My dream is that we would send Xendit alums, found companies all over Southeast Asia that screw things up for good. If we can go into problems and spaces that need redemption, and there's so many things that need redemption, I would love our people to go in and fix things in our part of the world. This idea of the PayPal mafia, the first kind of 100 at PayPal who launched LinkedIn, SpaceX, Tesla, Affirm, all these businesses after PayPal. And I want the same for us, that Xendit becomes the mafia of Southeast Asia where our alums go and build the next set of businesses. Because if these founders leave Xendit, we can teach them how to be good founders. They can build great cultures, and now we get not one generation change, but 2 generations change. And we can perpetuate the right culture, the right attitude throughout the region. That has way more massive impact than a single company can. So I think truly it's for us to build infrastructure both in the product that we build, the company that we build, and then into people so that they can build what God has called for them to build in their lives.